Please come in. You're right on time. The door only opens when the clock strikes midnight. Georgia and Hannah are preparing to broadcast from the belfry. Just like this old bell tower, they have many stories to tell. Some old and some new. Follow me up these stairs, but mind your step. Ah, they're waiting for you.
Let's talk about zombies, baby.
Well, first, I want to tell you a little bit about
Your mom.
rabies,
Oh, okay.
which we all know is kind of a truly terrifying disease. It affects your central nervous system and is commonly carried through raccoons, skunks, foxes, but mostly bats. I believe it's something like 95% of.
I freaking love bats.
I know. I think it's somewhere in the 90% range of all rabies. What's the word for it? Rabies bites, sure, are from bats, which is kind
Infections.
of infections. Yeah, infections are from bats in
Rabies cases.
in humans and in other mammals, or in like your pets. It can only be carried in mammals, which actually I did not know. I did not know a lot about rabies.
I think I did know that because we talked a lot about it in my microbiology class. It was a microbiology class, but we mostly talked about epidemiology. And I think it's because we were all just like the weirdo little kids.
Sure. So you wanted to learn about the weird stuff?
And it was 2013 and Ebola was like happening in real time.
Yeah. Obviously, it can also be carried by your pets, like your cats or your dogs, who then bite or scratch you. The virus must travel or reach your brain before you start showing symptoms, which includes weakness or discomfort, fever, headache, a prickling or itching sensation at the exposure site, which is where you've been bitten. But then things start to progress into the more later stages. Cerebral dysfunction, anxiety, confusion, agitation, delirium, abnormal behavior, hallucinations, insomnia, and the one we all know and love, hydrophobia, which is the fear of water. So if you've ever seen videos of people or humans with rabies being handed a glass of water, trying to drink it, and they physically can't, it's because they're afraid of it. Once you reach the later stages, it is extremely likely that you will succumb to the disease, which is the one thing that I did know. I'm so terrified of dying of rabies. That's the only thing I knew, is that if you get it, you can die.
So weird. Rabies is so weird. I mean, I know we kind of talked about it already when we talked about vampires, but you're obviously going much more in depth with it. It's so weird.
Well, we could talk about it more. I think the first thing I remember, or the first time I ever heard about rabies, was probably in some cartoon, like the foaming at the mouth imagery. All of these other symptoms like anxiety, confusion, and delirium. I always thought that people or creatures with rabies were just full of rage, that they were just freaked out. But no, it's just because their central nervous system has been screwed and everything's just fucked. Sorry, Mom.
I think the weirdest part is the hydrophobia part. Like, why does I mean, it's a virus, yeah?
It is. It's a vector-borne virus.
Like, why does it, what about the virus makes you hydrophobic? Normally there's a reason.
Yeah.
What is the evolutionary purpose of being afraid of water? with the rabies virus?
Gonna Google it because I sure didn't write that down. Oh, it's because the infection causes intense spasms in the throat when you try to swallow. So that's not only when you
Oh,
try to like
it's not just water.
right, because you have a hard time swallowing anyway. So your central nervous system, or well, your peripheral nervous system is really where the brain sends the signals to like your muscles and stuff.
Yeah.
So when your brain can't control your muscles anymore, you're not going to be able to swallow. Sometimes you can't even speak. I'm trying to remember what that word is called. It's like dysaspia or something where like where you lose your muscular control over like the speaking muscles in your face and in your throat.
Oh,
This is why I love Google. Dysarthria.
all I could think was dysphoria, and I was like, that's
Dysphoria.
not right.
That's entirely different. Yeah, that's when the nerves that allow you to use the muscles in your face and neck that help you speak are messed up, either by trauma or
Right.
some other cause like MS, muscular dystrophy, that kind of thing. Anywho, rabies is weird. And
Yay.
hydrophobia is apparently not actually hydrophobia. It's apparently not being able to swallow real good. But most deaths from rabies happen in parts of the world that don't have access to the vaccine, typically due to funding. Why something like that can't be free? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, lest we forget, healthcare can
Capitalism.
only be helpful if it's profitable.
Yeah.
Human African trypanos trypanosomiasis. Trypanosomiasis, human African trypanosomiasis, or sleeping sickness, or
Mm-hmm.
HAT, which is what I'm going to call it, HAT.
I've always heard of sleeping sickness, but
Yeah,
yeah.
is a vector-borne parasitic disease. The vector in this case, in human African trypanosomiasis, is the tsetse fly in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
The acute form of HAT can exhibit symptoms within the first few weeks or months of being affected and will very quickly take over the central nervous system and shut down the brain.
Mm-hmm.
There is a chronic form of the disease, which accounts for a majority of the reported cases and can be treated, wherein the same symptoms lie dormant as the disease more slowly advances throughout the peripheral and central nervous system over several months or several years. So the first stage of symptoms include fever, headaches, enlarged lymph nodes, joint pains,
Gross.
and itching. The second stage occurs after the parasites cross the blood-brain barrier. Another alliteration.
Blood-brain barrier.
Blood-brain barrier.
Babbling. Babbling.
Baboons. I know what you're trying to say.
Babbling. Bumbling band of baboons. Is that what she says? Yeah.
But so when they cross the blood-brain barrier, one would experience behavioral changes, confusion, sensory disturbances, poor coordination, and of course, sleep cycle disturbance. It's very likely that this disease has existed for several thousand years and could have affected Egyptians as early as 3000 BCE. Evidence of the animal version or animal transmitted version of HAT. Yeah, evidence includes a veterinary papyrus of the Kahun papyri. Papyri? I don't know how you say that. What's the plural of papyrus?
I would say papyri. What?
Yes, it's
Well, because octopus is
octopi.
octopi.
So papyri. It's from 2000.
Focus is foci.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I just can't talk now.
What's
It
new?
was written in 2000-ish BCE, in which a cattle disease is described that resembles HAT.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a bull with Ushao in winter and he is blinded, his 2 eyes are thick, gash thou as above. So kill it. If you see
Oh.
a bull with Ushao in winter from cold, since its arrival in the summer, his temples are wrinkled, his eyes are running, his stomach groaning, he does not walk. Gash thou as above. Arabian historian Ibn Khaldun wrote in the 14th century about the Sultan Mari Jata's death. He had been smitten by the sleeping illness, a disease which frequently afflicts the inhabitants of that climate, especially the chieftains who are habitually affected by sleep. Those afflicted are never awake or alert. The sickness harms the patient and continues until he perishes. John Atkins and Thomas Winterbottom both wrote on the sleeping sickness in 1734 and 1803, respectively, and David Livingstone hypothesized in 1852 that it spread through the tsetse fly bites. So nearly 5,000 years after it was first written about, well, potentially written about in animals.
Damn.
2 epidemics of the sleeping sickness occurred in Africa from 1896 to 1906, and then in 1920 to the late 1940s. But then it happened again at the turn of the 21st century.
Ooh.
So there have sort of been, swells of its recurring.
I was gonna say, I wonder how long it takes to mutate. Like if that's why the waves keep happening, because it
it seems like 1896 to 1906. So it was about 14 years, but there was also yellow fever.
That's 10 years.
1906 to 1920 is 14 years.
Oh, I thought you said 1896 to 1906.
Oh, I was sorry. I was talking about between the gap between the 2 epidemics.
Yeah. Okay.
My bad. No, you're right. It is so 10 years of the first epidemic, and then about 20 in the second one that happened very shortly after. But that was happening concurrently with yellow fever or malaria, which was also in sub-Saharan Africa. So a lot was happening. A lot of people were feeling really crappy all the time.
Yeah.
Not to mention, this was post World War One, the Great War, and just before World War II.
The Great War.
The Great War, as I call it.
Back from the Great War. I'm dead.
And I want to talk about Hansen's disease.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Or leprosy.
I love talking about leprosy.
Oh, good. I'm sure you know a bit more about it than I do. I don't think that I've ever really gone out and
touched an armadillo.
Well, no, of course I haven't done that. I have actually seen a dead armadillo on the road before and come close to it, touched it with my steel-toed boot, but
armadillos in the Midwest don't carry Hansen's disease, if I remember correctly. It's the ones in the Southwest. I think they're a different species, and those are the ones that carry Hansen's disease.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that.
Well, I know Hansen's disease cannot be transmitted through touch anyway.
No, it can't.
So
that was a fallacy.
Yes.
Yes.
Huge stigma.
Yes.
Just like during the AIDS epidemic, people thought it could be transmitted through touch.
And with leprosy, I think it was just a general misunderstanding of science in general, since leprosy has been around for so long, or has been known about for so long. Right. I mean, it's literally in the Bible, so we know it's been around for a long time, way before anything about science was understood. With AIDS, I think a lot of that was just stigma.
Interesting how with disease, there's always people who believe one thing or another. Like some people believe that you can take a horse medicine to cure COVID. Wasn't that right? It was a horse thing.
Or just inject yourself with bleach.
Yeah, that too. Clorox.
Please do. If you think that'll work, just go ahead and do it.
Oh my goodness. Please don't.
Do us all a favor.
How dare you? So Hansen's disease, or leprosy. It is a slow-moving bacterial infection that affects your nerves, your peripheral nervous system. So that includes your skin, your eyes, and the inner lining of your nose. It can cause any affected area on your body to lose sensation, including the ability to feel pain. I didn't know that. So that's
Mhm.
why people who are affected by Hansen's disease, if they have an injury in the affected area, they don't feel it. And so these open wounds just sit there for forever.
Yeah.
That's gross. I feel
Yeah.
so bad. My gosh. Rather than affecting the central nervous system as the previous viruses did, Hansen's affects almost entirely the peripheral. It doesn't really do much to the brain.
Yeah.
It can cause severe skin problems, such as okay, discolored patches of skin, growths and ulcers, swelling or lumps on the face, and loss of eyebrows or eyelashes. Some other symptoms include muscle weakness, especially in the hands and feet, enlarged nerves, especially those around the elbow, knee, and in the sides of the neck. I don't think I'm not sure what that means. Like enlarged nerves, like poking out of the skin, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird.
That was from the National Institute of Health website. Maybe around the elbow, knee, and in the sides of the neck.
Oh.
Well, I mean, in your knee, like the sciatic nerve runs down. Oh,
Like that's
oh,
the side of the neck.
oh, oh, God.
Oh, yeah, like that. It just
Oh,
looks
okay,
extra veiny,
okay.
They just look like gym bros.
I'm gonna leave that in. For anyone curious, Georgia just showed me pictures of people's necks with enlarged nerves, and it was terrible. It was terrible. I will include those in the sources or
Okay.
something similar. Oh
I
my
just
goodness
Googled
gracious.
enlarged nerves and then
Oh,
went to images.
oh, oh my gosh, where even was I? Oh goodness. Okay, enlarged nerves, vision problems, a stuffy nose or nosebleeds. Untreated Hansen's disease can lead to paralysis and loss of hands and feet, reabsorbed fingers and toes, which I did not know about. I thought that they just fell off. Chronic non healing ulcers on the bottoms of the feet, blindness, nose disfigurement, painful or tender nerves, and a burning sensation in the skin.
Ugh.
Holy balls. For people who have Hansen's disease, I am so sorry. No wonder there used to be and still is such a stigma around it, which has historically just, I mean, that's always been a thing. It is an ancient disease. The first known evidence of leprosy on a human skeleton was from 4,000 years ago in India.
Yeah.
Yeah, something about being able to see the lesions on the bone, like the cortical bone,
Yes.
and
I
how it
remember that.
affected the spongy bone underneath and was like pulling it. Oh,
Are you gonna talk about Che Guevara?
no.
Okay.
What about Che Guevara?
That's what I'm trying to Google real quick.
Did he have leprosy?
He didn't have leprosy, no.
Oh, I used to be obsessed with that movie, The Motorcycle Diaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a terrible person, but just fascinating, you
You
know?
know, I think it's one of those I think it's one of those things where he did what he thought was best for his country and his people, and that led to some of those not great things, but
There was certainly change.
yeah. Well, I can't find it. Basically, I was just trying to find a little bit more about him visiting the leper colony in Peru
Oh, oh,
and
oh, oh.
how that led to his radicalization,
Gotcha. Okay. I forgot that that
Um
was a thing.
yes. Yeah. Because he was one of the few people who would touch the patients without gloves or anything, and everyone was like, oh my God. And that's one of the things that led to him becoming radicalized, becoming an agent of the people, trying to cause change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was the one who saw the ailments of the people.
Yeah.
It eventually became, martyr, but whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I was trying to look for.
Okay. But I just wanted to talk very, very briefly about the history of leprosy. So I'd mentioned the first known evidence of leprosy on a human skeleton was from 4,000 years ago. The disease was also referenced in Chinese texts in 400 BCE, Greek texts in the 2nd and 3rd centuries of the Common Era, and, as you'd mentioned before, in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Between the 11th and 13th centuries, it really spread throughout Europe and the Middle East as trade expanded.
Mm-hmm.
So it's thought that the acute symptoms were what caused people to think it was highly contagious because it's so grotesque.
Yeah.
And those who were affected with the disease were then ostracized and isolated from the rest of the population. Those wealthy enough to afford it could be isolated to their own homes, but those not wealthy enough were sent to
leper colonies.
And it's not even apartments or anything like that. It would be neighborhoods or sections of cities.
Or islands that were cut off from everyone else. Yeah.
Being affected by the disease was thought to be considered a punishment for their sins, like divine punishment. Shocker. At least in the 11th and 13th.
Everything we talk about is just punishment.
Isn't that how it is?
For being poor and depressed.
Human nature is all about giving little treats for doing good deeds in the name of the Lord, the Lord, and being punished.
My Lord.
My Lord. And being punished for doing something opposite or antithetical to the Lord. My Lord. These people affected with Hansen's were many times treated as if they actually died. Their families would conduct funeral services even though they were still living because they would be sent away. That's why it's called the living death.
We're just gonna pretend that they don't exist now.
Yeah. They were also allowed to collect those people's inheritance.
Oh, really?
How messed up is that? Yeah.
That's fucked up.
I know. And that's just a little tidbit of the history of leprosy. Do you have any drop-ins that I might not know about? I tried not to look into it too much because I just don't like thinking about disease in general.
Oh, I love talking about epidemiology.
I never had to take a class on it. I think looking at disease on the human skeleton when I was taking my bioarchaeology courses in undergraduate or for my undergraduate degree, that was fun. That was interesting. I think I just have an issue with the flesh. I think people are gross.
I don't like moist remains. I'm fine with skeletons, obviously, as much as we deal with that kind of thing.
People who still have their humors.
But I don't want to deal with your humors. That's disgusting.
I know. Couldn't be me.
No. Okay. I'm good.
So you don't have anything?
No.
Okay.
Just Che Guevara.
Oh, yeah.
Copy paste that right there.
What do these ailments have in common?
Well, they're all diseases.
Well, yeah. Well, or virus. That could also be disease.
They're all things that fuck you up. Sorry, Mom. And by Mom, I mean Melinda. My mom doesn't care.
They're all things that attack the human body's nervous system.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. If we're being
and
specific,
and
yes.
disrupt the natural functions of the body.
Uh-huh.
Having your natural functions disrupted is something that is
I have my natural dysfunctions. Never mind. I don't have
uh
natural functions. I only have natural dysfunctions. I
I
quit.
was
All
gonna
right.
say that it's something that it's like a common fear in the human psyche to be afraid of losing like losing your functions.
Yeah. Well, that's why people are scared of getting old, right?
Yeah. There's a possibility that without treatment of these things, you could lose control over your own body. Also, getting
Yeah.
old, you don't have the same strength, you don't have the same speed, the critical thinking skills. It's because your body is starting to
You might not make it to the
degenerate.
bathroom in time.
Yeah. You just don't have the same.
And then you get dehydrated because you're scared about not making it to the bathroom on time.
Is that you now?
No, I'm
Because
just dehydrated because
because you're
I suck.
an old lady.
Yeah. Wait, speaking of,
Yeah. Yeah, you sip your water.
I will, thanks.
So it's not only like having a stuffy nose or drinking too much water and then having to pee and like losing your
Yeah.
control over your bladder.
Like your nose will actually fall off.
Yeah. It's like it's losing your humanity.
Yeah.
You lose your sight, your sleep. You lose your ability to think and form sentences. You lose your gross
To
and fine motor
touch
functions.
touch things.
You basically
Sense things even. It's not even that you can't touch things, you can't sense them if
so
you do touch them.
if you are succumbed by to these things, you just stop being a person anymore.
Well, how do you perceive the world?
I don't know if you can
You know, that kind of ties in with
like that.
I think therefore I am.
Mm-hmm.
If I perceive the world, therefore I exist within it. If you lose your ability to perceive the world, am I high? Did I just have a crazy thought? If you lose your ability to perceive the world, how do you exist within it?
Yeah, you don't.
Like obviously you do exist within it, but how do you rationalize that within yourself?
I barely think, so therefore I'm barely a person. You know,
I overthink, so I don't know what that means.
you're more than a person.
I'm more than a person.
So there's another affliction or disease with some connections to both these fears and the diseases which these fears originate, and it can be found in zombies.
Yay.
So, as you mentioned in the previous episode, zombies, or at least that word, originally is from Haitian French.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Haitian Creole it's zombie, like with an N,
Mm-hmm.
as in no,
In the phonetic alphabet, I believe it's November.
November. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's basically just used to describe an animated corpse, like we've talked about in all of our, I think all of our previous episodes. Reanimated corpses represent another kind of taboo. They
Mm-hmm.
It tends to come from nefarious means like wrongful death, black magic, or inhumane experimentation,
Mm-hmm.
Frankenstein's monster. And similarly in in voodoo, people die in two different ways, naturally or unnaturally. The
Mm-hmm.
souls from those who die unnaturally linger at their grave and are then vulnerable to Boko,
Mm-hmm.
as you had just mentioned, who steal these souls to control their undead body.
Yeah. I didn't mention this in my episode, but I did see something that also talked about how there were two different kinds of zombies because in stealing the soul to control the body, the soul was then trapped, and that is its own kind of zombie in a way.
I mean, in reality, like you'd mentioned in your episode, it was the result of being drugged and not actually dead coming back to life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's they've just been given some sort of psychoactive drug. What did you say it was called?
Datura, the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the after effects of taking that sort of make you lose your sense of self, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
when you take a psychedelic or some other psychoactive drug. It messes with your perception of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If someone who takes that drug, either willingly or unwillingly, were to come out of it and told, oh, you were dead and you've come back to life, their entire
Easily believe
reality
that.
could shift.
Well, and like I said, it made them open to suggestion. It made them a lot more suggestible.
Right.
So, yeah, you would believe
Everything.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably would. I'm very gullible.
Oh, I should do that to Galvez. Hannah's character in our D&D campaign has an addiction to a drug that also makes you highly suggestible.
Yes. And you never gave me a suggestion, so she's just been chilling.
Yeah, it's like, oh, she has agency for once.
So, also, like you'd mentioned, I'm going to just keep saying that the concept of zombies became more internationally known in the early 20th century during the US Haitian occupation. William Seabrook posted William
Yeah, on
Seabrook.
Twitter. Yeah.
It's X now.
Back then it was still Twitter.
In 1929.
Yes, obviously.
He published a book called, I think it was The Magic Island.
Yeah.
In 1929 about cultural traditions in Haiti and mentioned zombies. He actually cited an 1864 Haitian criminal code.
Yes, I read about this.
That officially recognized zombies as as being real. Zora
Yes.
Neale Hurston encountered
Wait,
what?
are you going to say what the code is?
Oh no.
Oh, well, it says that if you if zombify someone, for lack of a better term, and they are then buried, regardless of the outcome, you will be tried for murder.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating,
mm-hmm.
especially for the 1800s.
So for that law to essentially both recognize zombies as being real and
Yes.
enact punishment for anyone who creates zombies is like, wow, okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Seems so far ahead of its time.
That's kind of fun. Zora Neale Hurston, in visiting Haiti, encountered a woman who was presumed dead 30 years prior and thought to have been drugged. She wrote, what is more, if science ever gets to the bottom of voodoo in Haiti and Africa, it will be found that some important medical secrets, still unknown to medical science, give it its power rather than gestures of ceremony.
But that wasn't the one that didn't they do? I can't remember. They did some form of identification and it didn't match the woman that was actually dead. I want to say it was like was that her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fingerprints.
Yeah, fingerprints. That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. At this point in history, zombies were more well known as being like the Haitian version, not the scientific medicine version that we know, like the virus that we know today. Richard Matheson's 1954 novel, I Am Legend,
which is technically vampires,
which I wrote combined zombies and vampires ? I did not read the book. I didn't watch the movie. You know, the most recent one with Will Smith. It was terrible. That was what solidified the idea of a zombie apocalypse, which is what I'm terrified of. Could you imagine living in a world where you had never been introduced to the concept of a worldwide zombie infection? I feel like it's just been in media as long as I can remember.
Yes. I'm trying to remember what happens in I Am Legend. It's really depressing in the book.
Oh, the book, it's this human man
Yes.
is isolated, secluded away from society. The vampires are trying to break into his house. He escapes. He
Yeah.
is essentially or eventually captured by the vampires. He meets this woman vampire who's like,
Yes.
you need to get away. You
Yeah.
can't trust them.
They're portrayed as like the good guys, really.
Vampires, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the very end, she assists him in suicide. And as he's like, he's lying there dying essentially in a cell, he looks around and all of the vampires are looking down at him like with disgust and horror. And he realizes that he is what a vampire once was to humanity. Like he is the other,
Yeah.
the horrific thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it became normal to be a vampire, and yes, and like monstrous to be human. Yes, that's what I was trying to remember. I was like, there was a weird twist there. What was it?
Yeah.
I listened to it. I didn't read it, but it
was okay to drink blood.
Yeah. Anyway.
And anyone who didn't is like, bleh. The subsequent film adaptation, which I think is Night of the Living Dead, right? Is that what it is?
Of I Am Legend?
Yeah.
No, it's called I Am Legend.
Oh.
With Will Smith.
No. There was an earlier one.
Oh, that's not Night of the Living Dead. No.
No, it was based on I Am Legend, but it's basically not at all that similar.
No. It still wasn't like it was a loose adaptation.
Okay. I can't remember what it was called though. The Last Man on Earth.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one with Vincent Price, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Wikipedia says yes.
Yeah. I watched that.
Oh, it was inspiration for Night of the Living Dead. Well, inspiration is something entirely different than an adaptation.
Yeah. I watched that, I don't think I finished it. I watched that within the last 10 years with my dad, The Last Man on Earth.
Yeah.
I don't remember a whole lot about it, except Vincent Price, because it's Vincent Price.
Of course. But so Night of the Living Dead.
Yes.
Which was inspired by I Am Legend, was where the modern zombie was introduced, like the people eating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though they're vampires.
Even though they're vampires.
Yes.
The flesh eating. Blech.
Yeah.
So what are some ways one can become a zombie? In Haiti, it was by being drugged.
By being drugged, yes.
A fatal neurotoxin found in pufferfish is or was utilized to put someone into an intense trance or suspended animation that makes them appear dead. In George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, there you go. Anyone who dies turns into a zombie. In The Walking Dead, it's through an airborne virus. In 28 Days Later, it's a bloodborne virus. In Resident Evil, it's a lab-made virus. Well, depending on which game. In The Last of Us,
Umbrella Chronicles.
Yes,
it's the only one I played.
The cordyceps fungus. So most of these things have something in common, at least in the movies and shows and games.
Are you going to talk about like the zombie ants and stuff at all? Okay, good. I'm excited.
Most of these things have something in common, and that is it's potentially inescapable.
Ugh, yeah, I hate that.
It's widely understood that if a zombie virus infection or parasite disease, a zombie disease, were to be a reality, we would probably be really screwed.
Yeah, and I think COVID proved that.
I agree.
If something is more contagious than COVID, which is really contagious, and it would have more devastating effects, like physically, more violent effects physically.
Especially if the more modern versions of zombies, like the fast kind, the fast, super hungry kind, are a thing, more people would be infected quickly. However, I have a quote from Simon Pegg who thought that zombies should be the opposite. He said they are slow and steady in their approach, weak, clumsy, often absurd. The zombie relentlessly closes in, unstoppable, intractable. So while it's still potential, it's not really able to escape it, zombies are slower.
Yeah. Well, I think the horrifying part of those movies is the fact that you're just trapped in a house waiting.
You are. Because the world out there is, you're not able to trust it
Yeah.
anymore.
It's like no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, it's inevitable that one way or another, that's all that you have in your future. You're gonna succumb one way or another.
You're in survival mode. So then when you come across other people who are also in survival mode, it's human versus human too.
Yeah.
So you have that to contend with. You have the infection to contend with, loss of resources.
Do you know about the short story, The Screwfly Solution?
Mm-mm.
Do you know about the real thing, The Screwfly Solution?
No, never heard of this before. Should I Google it
Okay.
later?
I'll Google it real quick right now because I want to tell you about it. But I don't want to get the details wrong. The Screwfly Solution uses it's a sterile insect technique for exterminating insect populations, in this case, screwflies.
Okay.
This short story called The Screwfly Solution came out in the 70s. It's like a sci-fi story. The name of the author, it's a pen name on the story, but it's Raccoona Sheldon.
Oh boy.
Her real name was Alice Sheldon. She has a really cool bio in herself, which is a whole other story. But basically, the name of the story refers to this sterile insect technique that they use to exterminate insects, like I said. In the story, men, it's horrifying because of the current world that we live in, but in this story, men are infected by some kind of virus or some pathogen, whatever. And it makes them really violent, specifically towards women.
Mm.
And to the point where the men sexualize all women, even their own daughters, and then just murder them. And
I hate it.
areas where all the women have been eradicated, whether because they left, they ran away, or they were murdered, they're called they're the cleansed zones. And
what did you say this was called?
It's called The Screwfly Solution. It's a really short story. You could read it in an evening and just want to pass away. And it's from the perspective of a woman. Her husband was a scientist and he recognized that he was infected, and so he writes letters and to her like, stay away from me, and then she kind of runs away to the woods and hides, and it's about what happens to her.
Wow.
It's
I hate that.
It's so heavy, especially because of, just the climate that we live in, with especially all the things that have been happening lately about, I don't know, women's rights to control their own bodies and everything. It's just, but the pathogen, it's the same kind of thing. It's like the men are not in control of their own bodies. They give in to this violent pathogen that turns them into mindless, violent people. I don't know.
Basically, zombies, just a different.
Yeah, just a different kind. Maybe with more agency, with more rational thought.
Mm-hmm.
But it also paranoid and skeptical and mistrusting. Anyway.
Well, now I'm sad.
Also read Alice Sheldon's bio. It's also very sad in the end, but she was a really cool person, it sounds like.
Where was I?
I don't know, sorry.
Ah, yes. Simon Pegg.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so one must already be dead and become resurrected by having the zombie disease inside of them. Either get resurrected by a necromancer or
Mm-hmm.
have another zombie pass it on as a vector, like
Mm-hmm.
via bite or scratch. If the person is alive and gets turned, the disease takes over their nervous system and kills them in order to become this undead thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then the dead person, who might not be a person anymore, this zombie wants to consume other people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically at that point, they just become a vector.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose personhood in becoming a zombie.
They become a fleshy vessel
Fleshy vessel.
of hunger.
Uh-huh.
Zombies don't appear to have any control over their senses or thoughts, generally speaking.
Yes.
Warm bodies and iZombie are outside of that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are able to,
And Frankenstein.
and Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
They're able to think and speak clearly, or at least clearly enough. Most often they're merely driven by that primal instinct to consume and
Mm-hmm.
spread the disease, making more zombies.
Mm-hmm.
In the Last of Us video games and the newly adapted TV show, the fungal cordyceps infection appears to just want a further spread and to become all consuming. It wants to just
Mm-hmm.
take over and sees humans as the virus to it,
Mm-hmm.
like a parasite.
Yeah.
So people are the life force, so they must be eated. Hunger is a
Uh-huh.
zombie's only driving stimulus, really.
Yeah. Insatiable hunger, I would say.
Insatiable hunger.
Yeah.
Love that word.
Hmm.
But eating other people is a taboo, unfortunately. Why do people eat each other? Why would you want to? Why would you not want to?
I like Chris's comment about cannibalism.
Yes. So why would you not want to eat another person? Disclaimer, I personally don't crave human flesh. I like really only eat chicken, except for bacon. Humans have eaten each other. I had to make that disclaimer.
Mm-hmm.
Humans have eaten each other out of
As an
practicality.
anthropologist, if you were in a society where it was culturally acceptable, would you try it?
Probably not. In reading about cannibalism, there was a scientific study done on people to see if cannibalism was this sort of innate thing. They were given a fake scenario where, and just ask questions where they were told, if you were part of this society and it was a norm to
Mhm.
eat other people in order to survive, there was no other food on the planet, would you do it? And I think over 50% of people were like, no, I still wouldn't do it. I would starve.
I also think that that is not a good basis because until you are starving, you don't actually know. Until you are actually starving to death, you don't know what you would and would not do.
But that's unethical. So we have case studies for that, like instances where I think it was a 1980s plane crash where,
The Andes.
yeah, in the Andes, where
Mm-hmm.
the people, the soccer team ate each other and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely waited until the last moment and perished,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
The Donner Party.
Yeah. But outside of that, humans have eaten each other also as punishment, like
Mm-hmm.
eating the other person's body desecrates them as part of a religious or as part of a ritual in like a religious
The
practice
Aztecs.
or for medicine,
Mm-hmm.
like the mummies,
Mm-hmm.
eating the mummies. But overall, it just doesn't really bode well for the survival of the group if you're eating each other, because then you have less
Yeah.
people.
I think it would also depend from like an FDA perspective. I think it would also depend on why the person you are eating is dead. If they died from an illness, well, then, it's like, are you eating tainted meat?
Mm-hmm. If they were a healthy person, are they available for consumption? What is the
Yeah.
expiration date?
If they're a healthy person, do you have to wait until after they have contributed to repopulation before they're eligible to be consumed? Or, maybe they died in an accident. Waste not, want not again.
I think there are two trains of thought to not eating people. I
Yeah.
think one is there are easier and more efficient ways to feed your people
Yeah.
than to eat each other. And another is that we've put ourselves in a different and air quotes better
Mm-hmm.
category than the animals that we do
Mm-hmm.
eat or raise for slaughter and
Yeah.
eat, which is I wrote down is psychological essentialism.
Ooh.
We have considered ourselves more essential or more important because likely because of that concept of the soul, our ability to think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We currently have no evidence of
Yeah.
cows speaking and critically thinking. Also, modern religion doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Christianity, although Christianity,
Transubstantiation, come on.
yeah, but that's an entirely different topic.
But it is funny that yes, that is a staple of like one of the largest modern religions, and yet cannibalism is bad.
Yeah.
Hypocritical.
I know we could kind of talk about this for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to talk about next herd mentality.
Mm.
Zombies also represent mob behavior or that herd mentality that people nowadays so commonly speak against.
Mm-hmm.
Sheeple, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure we've all heard that 100 million times by now.
Oh yeah, you snowflake.
Well, yeah, zombies are kind of the worst version of herd mentality. And it's an army of
Yeah.
zombies with nothing better to do that and nothing they would love more than to just consume flesh.
Yeah. Or consume in general if you want to make it a larger symbolic representation of something.
Exactly. Well, humans are a social species, so of course we pass things on. We love to control the focus one way,
Mm-hmm.
but that theme of herd mentality is innate in zombies because of that hunger stimulus. I think it's a lot different than the herd mentality you and I are used to. It's a lot more social than physical.
Yeah.
Unless you're like at a concert and the pit opens up. Now that's a herd mentality I can get behind.
I told you about how I got kicked in the ovaries once, right?
Yeah, you have. I don't think
Oh,
I've ever been in a pit, so
oh. Ever since then, I just yeah. For everyone else, I have PCOS and I had just experienced my first ruptured cyst. So I must have been, oh, that's the thing I was doing when I was 18.
mhm.
Having my first ruptured cysts. Um, Throwback to last episode. I went to a concert. I think it was Chiodo's again with Matt, my boyfriend at the time. And the pit opened up like right where we were. So as it opened, we were like right on the perimeter. And this tiny girl just had to go in like doing her windmill kicks and everything right in the middle. And she just kicked me right in the abdomen. And I almost just like buckled to my knees. I was still taking Vicodin for the pain at this point, and she just kicks me right in the ovaries. And I just thought, all right, I'm done with this. I at 18, I am now too old for pits. Thank you.
So anyway, thank God for our critical thinking skills and not falling into
Our critical thinking skills.
our, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for the population as a whole, but
So now I'll talk about some zombie things that have happened in real life. Ooh.
Yay.
So in humans,
Yay.
do you remember bath salts
Oh my
in
God.
Florida? I don't have notes on this, but I just remembered it at the top of this episode. I totally forgot that
Is
that
it
happened.
is it because Shannon sent that screenshot yesterday about a Florida man?
No, I totally forgot about that.
Oh, how could you? It was disgusting.
I'm sorry. I can't. I block out disgusting things
Oh, I
generally.
need to read the headline for everyone else real quick. Florida man has 150 live bugs removed from his nose, comma, sinuses.
Ugh, ugh. It's even worse when I hear it out loud. Oh, it's so much worse.
Ew.
Because when I read it, I can just instantly switch to a different app and unread it in my brain.
Delete
Well, I'm going to
that.
talk about some gross stuff anyway.
Let's talk
Chronic
about
wasting
gross stuff.
disease.
Nice.
Chronic wasting disease in deer
Mm-hmm.
seems very terrifying. It's only been reported in cervids, so deer, elk, moose.
Mm-hmm.
It's a neurodegenerative disease that causes intense behavioral changes, excessive salivation, difficulty swallowing, tremors, emaciation, and general abnormal behavior.
It's the cervid version of mad cow disease, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've ever seen a video, terrifying. It's like very clearly this deer is a zombie now. It's real scary. There is a kind of cordyceps fungus found in Tibet that's also known as the caterpillar fungus, as it infects one specific insect, the ghost moth caterpillar. It kills the little guy,
Cool sounding bug.
mummifies itself, and then finally transforms into a sort of insectoid looking mushroom.
Oh.
The fungus is sought after for its medicinal properties. So, yes, it is being consumed.
Fascinating.
Other kinds of cordyceps can be found throughout the world, such as in the Peruvian jungle, which does consume insects, grows into the empty spaces that consumption creates,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually erupts out of the insect's body in these stalk-like or
Like
stalagmite formations. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
I do have some pictures that I will share to the Belfry Facebook group and are in the links I'll provide in the show notes. Conipids, which are fly parasites, attach to bees, where they will deplete a bee entirely of its fat reserves and hollow out its insides. The bee will then fly to the ground and dig itself a grave into the soil where it dies.
Uh-huh.
The fly inside continues to live, feasting on the dead bee, and then hibernates until it becomes an adult fly and digs itself out of the ground.
Isn't there's a wasp one like that too, right?
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but
yeah, they're like same kind of thing, but it's wasps instead of
yeah, it's just smaller insect parasites
yeah
take these things over. And oh, I just got a mental image of it.
So fascinating.
Oh, I hate it. Thankfully, humans have so far been a little bit too complex for things like these to take over.
But what about what's the one you can get from cleaning the litter box? No, that's what bunnies get.
I mean, we can get any kind of other parasite, but it's not going to be able to kill us. And well, it can kill us, but it can't kill us and take over our motor functions.
It's the thing that makes like why pregnant people shouldn't clean litter boxes. Toxoplasma.
Toxoplasma.
Yes. Toxoplasmosis. People get this infection from eating undercooked meat, but you can also get it from contact with cat feces. Most people infected with the parasite don't have symptoms. Some people get flu-like symptoms. It's most serious in infants and immunocompromised people.
Mm-hmm.
You get fever, swollen lymph nodes, headache, muscle aches, skin rash. But it can also cause inflammation of the brain,
Like
confusion,
meningitis.
encephalitis. Um,
Or I said like meningitis, Kim,
oh,
which
yeah,
is,
yeah,
encephalitis.
yeah. Confusion, poor coordination, muscle weakness, seizures, changes in alertness, but it can also cause like some behavioral changes and cognitive changes and like motor skill, affect your motor skills. And so,
Sounds a lot like becoming a zombie
well, some,
and these other sort of neurodegenerative things.
yeah, and some people, I mean, without spending some time to look into it, I couldn't tell you definitely one way or another. But I think some of the symptoms are these behavioral changes that might make you become a more suitable host for the pathogen. And then there's also this kind of theory that crazy cat ladies become crazy cat ladies because they are infected with toxoplasmosis.
Interesting.
And so, like, they have more things around them that kind of contribute to the success of the pathogen, like more cat poop.
Toxoplasmosis.
Yeah.
I'm gonna Google that.
Okay.
I'm gonna look way more into it.
Yeah, I'm remembering that from like a couple different sources that I listened to or read about 5 years ago. So,
I can add some sources to my source list. So basically, that's all I got. But I wanted to conclude with my thoughts.
mhm.
Zombies are just like us. They're obviously humans, but they've been turned into something more grotesque and infectious, and they no longer have bodily autonomy. Like I'd mentioned at the top of the episode, there are very real afflictions that can prevent oneself from keeping that control. You would no longer be yourself. But we have plenty of smarts to prevent a global scale spread. And we
Mhm.
we have powerful immune systems. So when it comes to taking care of ourselves in a situation like
When it
this,
comes to the zombie apocalypse,
we cannot let another COVID happen. I swear to God. I swear to God.
I'm surprised you didn't talk about CJD.
CJD.
Yes, that's like the human form of mad cow disease.
Oh. No, I just wanted to talk about chronic wasting disease.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Yeah. Did you know that the Cleveland Clinic has a zombie virus article?
Do they really?
They sure frickin' do. It came out because of The Last of Us
Oh,
last year.
is Cleveland a city that is kind of featured in the show?
No,
Oh, okay.
Cleveland Clinic is a really prominent hospital system, though. Whatever. You talk now.
No, I was just kind of thinking about how a lot of the like mad cow disease, chronic wasting disease, they're all prion diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And one way to contract a prion disease is through cannibalism. I think that's worth
Sure
mentioning.
is. Yeah, prion disease. I was reading a little bit about that. It's basically like folded over proteins that attach themselves to healthy proteins and make them folded over and all screwed up.
Yes, the like when the protein reproduces, the folded protein makes the new protein be misfolded incorrectly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's like an RNA thing I think that happens somewhere in
And
there.
since protein is essentially
Yeah.
the energy of the freaking universe,
And
it screws everything up.
like all these things that we've talked about that are prion diseases are it's like again there's that episode of Bones about it, the one with the bear. It's like episode 4, season 1, the one where they go to Washington
Oh yeah.
and the doctor is cannibal
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
and he had a prion disease. They were
Yeah.
like, well, did he have a prion disease because he ate people, or did he eat people because he had a prion disease?
Yeah. Chicken or the egg.
Yeah. Which I have always been fascinated by prion diseases. Shout out to Papua New Guinea.
So that's just further evidence that that hunger stimulus, that need to all
Mm-hmm.
consume, is not only like a fungal thing or a parasite thing.
Yeah.
Prions also do this.
Yeah.
Or cancerous cells eat all the healthy
Yeah.
cells.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just disease, but like, you know,
And we could talk about Kuru, which is a whole different story in itself,
yeah.
but that happened because the parts of the body associated with your central nervous system were the most significant. I don't like the immediate family members, the the most important people to the deceased were the ones to consume like the brain and the spinal
Mm.
kind of column area, because those were like, I kind of think it goes back to what we talked about that's where you exist. That's where, your brain makes you who you are. So I don't know if there's any evidence in that, but that's what it makes me think of. And so, but for whatever reason, prions existed in some of these people in Papua New Guinea. And then it became a whole epidemic. The laughing sickness. Isn't that horrible? And then you uncontrollably laugh until you die.
I was planning on actually talking about that, but I didn't take any notes on it because I was like, I feel like that would go on too long. So I'm
Oh,
happy you just know about it.
I do. Because again, I've been
That's great.
fascinated with prion diseases. It
Yeah.
might be because I lived in England when mad cow disease was so prevalent. And actually, that's a big part of the reason why I spent most of my childhood being a vegetarian, just because it was safer that way, in the 90s. So, yeah.
Also, shout out to Minecraft zombies. Burn.
Well, that concludes this week's broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wish to stay in touch, reach out to us at broadcastfromthebelfry@gmail.com or stalk us on Instagram at broadcastfromthebelfry. Again, I hope you've enjoyed our little show. Please rate and review. And until next week, stay spooky.